Maya Rodriguez stared at the scanner readings for the third time in 5 minutes, but the numbers did not change. Something massive hung in space ahead of their ship, something that should not exist. She pressed the comm button on her console and spoke into her headset. "Captain Morrison to the bridge, please." The exploration vessel. Meridian had been traveling through this sector for 2 weeks without finding anything more interesting than gas clouds and dead rocks. Maya served as chief security officer on what was supposed to be a routine survey mission. The crew of 43 people had signed up for 6 months of mapping empty space and testing new deep-range sensors. Nobody expected to find anything that would make the history books. Captain Jake Morrison arrived on the bridge within minutes, still pulling on his uniform jacket. He was a tall man with graying hair who had spent 15 years commanding exploration ships. Maya had worked with him on 2 previous missions and trusted his judgment completely. "What do we have, Rodriguez?" he asked as he moved to stand beside her station. Maya pointed at the main screen where a geometric shape floated against the star field. The object appeared to be made of some kind of dark metal that reflected no light from nearby stars. Its surface was perfectly smooth except for patterns of lines that seemed to shift and change as they watched. "It showed up on sensors about 10 minutes ago," Maya said. "The computer estimates it measures roughly 5 kilometers across and 3 kilometers high. The shape is completely artificial, Captain. No natural process could create something like that." Morrison studied the readings on Maya's screen. The object was definitely made by intelligent beings, but it did not match any known human technology. Earth had been sending ships into deep space for over 30 years without encountering other intelligent life. The discovery protocols that every exploration crew learned seemed almost silly until this moment. "Distance?" Morrison asked. "Approximately 2,000 kilometers and holding steady. It appeared to notice us as soon as we entered sensor range. The object has been scanning our ship for the past 8 minutes." Dr. Lisa Carter joined them on the bridge. She was the ship's xenobiologist, a woman in her 30s who had spent years hoping for exactly this kind of discovery. Her face showed excitement mixed with scientific curiosity as she examined the sensor data. "The scanning energy is unlike anything in our databases," Lisa said. "The patterns suggest extremely advanced technology. Whatever built this thing is far ahead of human science." Morrison nodded and moved to his command chair. He had dreamed of first contact since joining the space service, but now that it was happening, he felt mostly worry. Humanity's first meeting with alien intelligence would set the tone for everything that followed. "All stop," he ordered. "Maintain current distance, but do not approach. Activate first contact protocols immediately." The bridge crew began following, procedures they had practiced but never expected to use. Maya activated the ship's defensive systems while keeping weapons powered down. Tony Blake, the chief engineer, prepared communication arrays for every type of signal transmission humans had developed. The entire crew knew they were making history. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. The alien object continued its scans while the Meridian waited. Maya watched her sensors carefully and noticed that the scanning patterns had changed. Instead of examining the ship's hull and engines, the alien technology now seemed focused on the crew areas where people were located. "Captain," Maya said quietly, "I think it's scanning us now. The energy patterns are concentrated on sections with human life signs." Before Morrison could respond, every screen on the bridge flickered and went dark for several seconds. When the displays came back online, they showed something that made everyone step back in surprise. The alien object had moved closer, much closer. It now floated only 500 kilometers away, and Maya's sensors showed that some kind of energy field surrounded both ships. "Sir," Tony Blake called from his engineering station, "we have a problem. Something is interfering with our engines." "I'm reading massive energy fluctuations in the containment field." Morrison tried to contact the engine room, but got only static on the comm system. Maya checked her security monitors and saw that crew members throughout the ship were pointing at windows and talking excitedly. The alien object was now close enough to see with the naked eye. Suddenly, every speaker on the ship activated at once. A voice began speaking in perfect English with no accent that any human could identify. The words were clear and precise, but something about the tone made Maya feel cold. "Greetings, humans of the vessel Meridian. We are representatives of the hegemony, the peacekeeping force that maintains order throughout this galaxy. Your species has been identified as requiring immediate attention for the safety of all civilized worlds." Morrison found his voice and responded through the ship's communication system. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Exploration Vessel, Meridian. We come in peace and wish to establish friendly relations with your people." The alien voice continued as if Morrison had not spoken. "Human expansion patterns and technological development rates have been classified as potentially dangerous to galactic stability. Your species demonstrates concerning levels of aggression and unpredictable behavior. For the safety of existing civilizations, humanity will be relocated to a designated development zone where proper guidance can be provided." Maya felt her stomach drop. This was not the peaceful first contact that humanity had always hoped for. She checked her sensors again and confirmed what she feared. The energy field around both ships was not a communication device. It was a trap. "Captain," she whispered, "we cannot move. Whatever that field is, it has completely disabled our engines." The alien voice spoke again. "Do not attempt to resist this process. The hegemony has successfully managed hundreds of developing species using these proven safety protocols. Compliance will ensure the continued existence of your civilization under appropriate supervision." Dr. Carter moved closer to Maya's station and spoke quietly. "This is not first contact. This is an arrest." Morrison stood up from his command chair and addressed the alien directly. "We have committed no crimes and threatened no one. Humanity has the right to develop freely without interference from any outside force." There was a pause before the alien responded, and when it did, Maya thought she heard something like amusement in its voice. "Rights are privileges granted by those with sufficient power to enforce them. The hegemony possesses this power. You do not. Prepare for inspection and processing. Resistance will result in immediate termination of your vessel and crew." Maya looked at the sensor readings one more time. The alien object was massive and clearly far beyond human technology. The energy field holding them was unlike anything she had ever seen. But as she studied the patterns, she began to notice something interesting. The field was designed to contain ships that behaved in predictable ways. It assumed that trapped vessels would simply wait for rescue or surrender immediately. The aliens had never encountered humans before. Maya caught Morrison's eye and saw that he was thinking the same thing. The hegemony might have superior technology, but they were making assumptions about human behavior that could prove to be mistakes. She touched her console and began quietly analyzing the containment field while the alien voice continued explaining their fate. Humanity was about to learn whether peaceful intentions mattered when dealing with those who had already decided that safety required control. Dr. Lisa Carter tried to keep her hands steady as the transport beam pulled her from the Meridian toward the alien vessel. The hegemony had requested a single crew member for what they called a cultural assessment, and Morrison had chosen Lisa because of her xenobiology training. What she found inside the alien ship made her wish she had stayed behind. The transport beam deposited Lisa in a circular chamber with walls that seemed to glow with their own light. She could not tell what material they were made from, but everything looked smooth and perfect, like it had been grown rather than built. A single chair sat in the center of the room, clearly designed for human proportions. "Please be seated, Dr. Carter," came the same voice they had heard on the Meridian. "The assessment will begin momentarily." Lisa sat down and immediately felt restraints emerge from the chair to hold her arms and legs in place. She tried not to panic as devices descended from the ceiling and began scanning her with lights that shifted through colors she had never seen before. "Tell me about human reproductive patterns," the voice commanded. For the next 2 hours, Lisa answered hundreds of questions about human biology, culture, technology, and social structures. The alien interrogator seemed particularly interested in how quickly humans developed new technologies and how they dealt with conflicts between different groups. Every answer prompted more detailed questions until Lisa felt like she was being dissected with words. But it was what she saw between questions that truly frightened her. The walls of the chamber were transparent from the inside, and Lisa could see into other rooms throughout the alien vessel. In one chamber, she watched beings that looked like large insects working at control panels. In another room, she saw what appeared to be a museum filled with artifacts from dozens of different species. Weapons, artwork, pieces of technology, and other objects were displayed like trophies. Most disturbing were the holding areas. Lisa counted at least 20 different types of beings kept in separate containment fields. Some looked almost human, while others were so alien she could barely comprehend their shapes. All of them appeared to be prisoners. "How many species has the hegemony relocated?" Lisa asked during a brief pause in the questioning. 237 civilizations have been successfully managed through our development program," the voice replied without emotion. Each presented potential threats to galactic stability that required intervention. Lisa looked more carefully at the artifacts in the museum chambers. She began to notice patterns in the displayed objects. Advanced weapons, complex artistic works, and sophisticated technological devices. These were not the possessions of primitive species that needed guidance. They belonged to advanced civilizations that had been conquered. "What happens to species in the development zones?" she asked. "They are provided with appropriate living spaces and resources sufficient for their needs. Technological development is carefully monitored to prevent dangerous advancement. Cultural activities are permitted within acceptable parameters." The clinical language could not hide what Lisa was beginning to understand. The development zones were prisons where entire civilizations were slowly strangled. The hegemony did not help species develop safely. They prevented development entirely. When the assessment finally ended, Lisa felt something change in her mind. The alien technology had done more than scan her body and record her answers. It had planted something that made her feel calm and agreeable about everything the hegemony planned to do to humanity. But Lisa was a scientist, and her training in critical thinking was stronger than the alien conditioning. As the transport beam carried her back to the Meridian, she forced herself to analyze what had happened to her thoughts. The peaceful acceptance she felt was artificial, imposed by technology that was designed to make captives cooperative. Back on the Meridian, Lisa found Maya Rodriguez waiting for her in the shuttle bay. The security officer studied Lisa's face carefully as she stepped off the transport pad. "How do you feel?" Maya asked quietly. "Wonderful," Lisa replied, and was horrified to hear herself say it. "The hegemony representatives are very reasonable. They have excellent plans for helping humanity develop safely." Maya nodded and escorted Lisa to the medical bay without saying anything else. On the way, they passed Tony Blake, who was working on an access panel in the corridor. He looked up as they went by, and Lisa saw concern in his eyes. In the medical bay, Maya ran every scanner they had over Lisa while pretending to conduct a routine post-transport medical check. What she found confirmed her worst fears. Lisa's brain showed signs of artificial modification in the areas that controlled trust and compliance. "They did something to your mind," Maya whispered. "Can you fight it?" Lisa concentrated on her scientific training and forced herself to think objectively about her experience. The warm feelings of trust and cooperation were like a drug in her system, but she could recognize them as foreign thoughts. "I can resist it," she said quietly. "But it is very strong." "Maya, we are in serious trouble. The hegemony is not a peacekeeping force. They are conquerors who have been capturing and imprisoning civilizations for centuries." Maya had suspected something like this, but hearing confirmation still made her angry. While Lisa fought against the alien conditioning, Maya had been analyzing the containment field that held their ship. What she discovered gave her the first hope they had felt since this nightmare began. "The field holding us is designed for species that behave predictably," Maya explained. "It assumes that trapped ships will either surrender immediately or wait for rescue. It is not built to handle a species that might try to break out using methods the designers never considered." Lisa forced her modified thoughts to focus on Maya's words. The artificial compliance in her mind kept trying to make her dismiss any plans for resistance, but her scientific curiosity was stronger. "What kind of methods?" Lisa asked. Maya showed her the scanner readings she had been taking of the containment field. The energy patterns were incredibly complex, but they followed rigid mathematical rules. The system was designed to adapt to conventional weapons and standard ship technologies, but it had limitations. Human engineering does not always follow the same rules as other species, Maya said. "We have a tendency to jury-rig solutions and use equipment in ways it was never designed for. Tony has some ideas about exploiting this." Meanwhile, Captain Morrison was meeting with the senior staff to discuss their situation. The hegemony had announced that the entire crew would undergo processing for relocation within 24 hours. Everyone who had contact with the aliens would be subjected to the same mental conditioning that Lisa experienced. "We have one advantage," Morrison told his officers. "They think we will cooperate once they modify our thoughts. They do not realize that humans can fight mental conditioning through willpower and training." Tony Blake had been studying the ship's systems since Lisa returned from her assessment. As an engineer, he was fascinated by the alien technology, but also frustrated by its inflexibility. "Their systems are incredibly advanced, but they follow very specific patterns," he explained. "It is like they cannot imagine that someone might use technology differently than intended. I think I can create interference in the containment field. If I can generate energy signatures that do not match their mathematical models," Dr. Carter, still fighting the artificial thoughts in her mind, made a crucial observation. "The hegemony representatives keep talking about safety and stability, but what they really mean is control. They eliminate any species that might challenge their dominance by pretending to help them." Maya checked her security monitors and saw alien scanners examining different sections of the ship. The hegemony was preparing for the mass processing of the crew, probably planning to modify everyone's thoughts until they accepted captivity as protection. How long do we have, Morrison asked. According to their timeline, the processing begins in 18 hours, Maya replied. But I think we should assume they might start early if they detect any resistance. Lisa forced herself to stand up despite the artificial calm that kept trying to make her sit down and accept whatever happened next. We have to try something, she said. I have seen what happens to species in their development zones. It is not life. It is slow death disguised as safety. Morrison looked around the room at his senior officers. They were facing an enemy with vastly superior technology and no apparent weaknesses. But they were also human, and humans had a long history of finding ways to win fights they should have lost. All right, he said. We make our stand here. Maya, what do you need from us? Maya smiled for the first time since the hegemony had appeared. I need you to trust that human unpredictability is about to become a weapon. Maya Rodriguez had always believed that the best defense was a good offense, but she had never tested that theory against aliens who could destroy her ship with a thought. While the rest of the crew prepared for what the hegemony called voluntary relocation, Maya and Tony Blake worked in the engineering sections where alien scanners could not easily detect their activities. The fabrication units in Cargo Bay 3 are offline for maintenance, Tony explained as he pulled components from a storage locker. That means the aliens cannot monitor what we build there. We have maybe 12 hours before they notice the power fluctuations. Maya watched Tony work and marveled at the human ability to see possibilities where none should exist. The hegemony had superior technology, overwhelming firepower, and centuries of experience conquering other species, but they had never encountered a species that treated limitations as suggestions rather than absolute barriers. What exactly are we building? Maya asked as Tony began assembling pieces of industrial equipment in ways that definitely violated safety protocols. A field disruptor, Tony replied. At least I think that is what it will be. The containment field holding us operates on specific frequency harmonics. If I can generate a counter-frequency at exactly the right amplitude, it should create interference patterns that the system cannot compensate for. Maya understood enough engineering to know that Tony was guessing about most of the technical details. But she also knew that human innovation often worked best when people were forced to improvise solutions with inadequate resources. The hegemony expected logical, systematic approaches to problems. They would not anticipate humans building weapons out of coffee makers and recycling processors. In the medical bay, Dr. Lisa Carter continued fighting the artificial thoughts that the alien technology had planted in her mind. The conditioning was designed to make her compliant and trusting, but her scientific training provided tools for resisting mental manipulation. Every time the imposed thoughts tried to make her accept captivity as protection, she forced herself to remember the evidence she had seen. The museum of conquered civilizations, the prison cells full of different species, the clinical language that described genocide as safety management. Lisa, said Dr. Kevin Brown, the ship's psychologist, as he entered the medical bay. How are you feeling? Kevin had not been selected for assessment by the aliens, so his mind remained unmodified. Lisa was grateful to have someone she could talk to honestly about what was happening to her thoughts. The conditioning is strong, she admitted. Every few minutes I feel this overwhelming urge to report to the transport bay and cooperate with whatever the aliens want to do to us. But I can fight it if I stay focused on objective facts. Kevin nodded and began recording notes on his tablet. As the ship's psychologist, he had studied various forms of mental conditioning and brainwashing techniques. Understanding how the alien technology worked might help other crew members resist it. Can you describe the sensation of the artificial thoughts? He asked. Lisa concentrated on analyzing her own mental state with scientific objectivity. It feels like there is a voice in my head that keeps suggesting reasonable explanations for everything the hegemony does. When I remember the prisoners I saw, the voice tells me they are being protected from their own violent tendencies. When I think about the development zones, it suggests that controlled growth is safer than unrestricted advancement. Kevin made more notes and asked follow-up questions about the timing and intensity of the conditioning effects. What he learned concerned him greatly. The alien technology was sophisticated enough to target specific areas of human psychology while leaving other mental functions intact. Lisa could still think clearly about scientific problems, but her emotional responses to authority and safety had been artificially modified. Meanwhile, Captain Morrison was dealing with a different kind of pressure. The hegemony had begun contacting him every hour to discuss the details of humanity's relocation. Each conversation made it clearer that this was not a negotiation. "Captain Morrison," came the familiar alien voice over the communication system. "We have prepared suitable quarters for your crew in Development Zone 12. The facilities include recreational areas and educational programs designed to help humans adapt to their new circumstances." Morrison had learned not to argue directly with the hegemony representatives. Instead, he asked questions that forced them to reveal more about their true intentions. "What happens to species that complete your development program?" he asked. "Successful participants are granted increased privileges within their designated zones. Some individuals may eventually qualify for limited service roles within hegemony operations." The clinical language could not hide what Morrison understood. Nobody ever graduated from the development zones. The lucky ones became servants. The rest remained prisoners for life. In Cargo Bay 3, Maya and Tony had finished building their improvised field disruptor. The device looked like a collection of spare parts held together with emergency welding, which was exactly what it was. But Tony's engineering calculations suggested it might actually work. "The theory is sound," he explained as he calibrated the device. "The containment field operates by creating a stable energy matrix around our ship. If we can introduce chaotic frequencies into that matrix, the system should become unstable." Maya checked her security monitors and saw that alien scanning was becoming more intensive. The hegemony was probably preparing to begin mass processing of the crew ahead of schedule. "How chaotic do we need to be?" she asked. Tony smiled and pulled out a small device that Maya recognized as his personal music player. "I have been thinking about this problem incorrectly," he said. "The hegemony builds systems that respond to logical, predictable inputs. Their technology can adapt to any systematic attempt to break the containment field. But what if we do not try to break it systematically?" Maya was beginning to understand Tony's plan, and she liked it. "Jazz music," Tony continued, "is based on improvisation and unpredictable variations within loose structural frameworks. If I feed jazz rhythms into the field disruptor, it should create energy patterns that no logical system can anticipate or compensate for." It was the most ridiculous escape plan Maya had ever heard, which made it perfect for their situation. The Sci-Fi hegemony had conquered hundreds of civilizations using superior technology and logical tactics. They would never expect humans to fight back with improvised weapons powered by musical improvisation. Dr. Carter joined them in Cargo Bay 3 after escaping from the medical bay. The alien conditioning in her mind was becoming stronger as the processing time approached, but her determination to resist was growing stronger as well. "The hegemony representatives have been asking detailed questions about human psychological patterns," she reported. They want to understand how we respond to authority and what methods work best for maintaining compliance, but I think they are asking the wrong questions. Maya activated her field disruptor and watched the energy readings fluctuate in patterns that followed no predictable mathematical model. The jazz music created frequencies that rose and fell according to artistic inspiration rather than scientific logic. "What do you mean?" Maya asked. Lisa forced her conditioned thoughts aside and spoke as a scientist studying alien behavior. They keep assuming that humans will eventually accept captivity if it is presented as protection. They cannot understand a species that prefers dangerous freedom to safe imprisonment. Every question they ask reveals that they have never encountered a civilization that fights back after being captured. The containment field around the meridian began to fluctuate as Tony's improvised frequencies interfaced with the alien technology. Warning alarms sounded throughout the ship as various systems responded to the changing energy environment. Captain Morrison's voice came over the comm system. "All hands prepare for possible system failures. Engineering teams report to emergency stations immediately." Maya knew that they had only minutes before the hegemony detected what they were doing and responded with overwhelming force. But those minutes might be enough to prove that human unpredictability was more dangerous than alien technology. The field disruptor continued generating chaotic frequencies based on jazz improvisation, and the containment field continued fluctuating in patterns that its designers had never anticipated. For the first time since their capture, the crew of the Meridian had reason to hope. Maya looked at Tony and Lisa, two humans who had refused to accept that superior technology meant inevitable defeat. "Now we find out if they locked us in here for their safety or for ours," she said. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge watching his ship shake itself apart while alien voices filled the communication channels with increasingly angry demands. The containment field that had held the Meridian prisoner for 18 hours was now fluctuating wildly, sending energy surges through every system on the ship. Emergency lighting cast red shadows across control panels that sparked and smoked from the electrical chaos. "Captain," came the familiar alien voice, but now it carried a tone that Morrison had not heard before. The clinical calm was gone, replaced by something that sounded almost like concern. "Cease your interference immediately. The instabilities you are creating pose a threat to both vessels." Morrison smiled grimly as he watched the readings on his command console. For the first time since this nightmare began, the hegemony sounded worried about something. The jazz-powered field disruptor that Maya and Tony had built in Cargo Bay 3 was apparently causing problems that superior alien technology could not easily solve. "I do not know what you are talking about," Morrison replied. "We are experiencing system malfunctions due to your containment field. Perhaps you should release us so we can conduct proper repairs." There was a pause before the alien responded, and Morrison could hear what sounded like urgent discussions in the background. The hegemony representatives were clearly dealing with a situation they had not encountered before. "Your vessel will be destroyed if these instabilities continue," the alien voice finally said. "Compliance with relocation procedures is no longer optional. Prepare for immediate boarding and processing." Maya Rodriguez heard the threat over the ship's communication system as she worked to keep the field disruptor operational. The device was holding together despite generating energy patterns that violated several laws of physics, but she could see stress fractures forming in the improvised components. "Tony," she called to the engineer who was frantically adjusting frequencies on his music player. "How much longer can this thing hold together, Tony?" Looked up from his calculations with sweat running down his face. The field disruptor was operating far beyond its design specifications, assuming it had any design specifications to begin with. Maybe 10 more minutes before it overloads completely, he said. But Maya, look at these readings. The containment field is not just fluctuating, it is starting to collapse. Maya checked her security sensors and saw something that made her heart race. The energy matrix that had held their ship prisoner was developing gaps and weak points. The chaotic frequencies generated by jazz improvisation were creating interference patterns that the hegemony's logical systems could not predict or compensate for. Dr. Lisa Carter joined them in Cargo Bay 3, moving carefully to avoid the electrical discharges that now filled the air around the field disruptor. The alien conditioning in her mind was fighting desperately to make her stop the resistance effort, but her determination to remain free was stronger than the artificial compliance. "The hegemony is preparing to board us," she reported. "I can feel their scanning technology trying to locate crew members for individual transport. But the energy chaos is interfering with their ability to lock onto human life signs." Maya realized that they had accidentally discovered something important. The same unpredictable frequencies that were disrupting the containment field were also blocking the alien transport systems. The hegemony could not selectively remove crew members as long as the field disruptor continued operating. But Maya also knew that their improvised weapon would not last much longer. The stress of generating impossible energy patterns was tearing the device apart. When it failed, they would be helpless against alien technology that had conquered hundreds of other civilizations. "We need a backup plan," she said. Tony had been thinking the same thing. While monitoring the field disruptor, he had also been analyzing the hegemony ship's energy signatures. What he discovered gave him an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. Their entire vessel operates on the same logical principles as the containment field, he explained. Predictable energy patterns, systematic responses to input, mathematical precision in every system. What if we do not just disrupt the field holding us? What if we disrupt them? Maya stared at Tony as she realized what he was suggesting. The jazz frequencies that were causing chaos in the containment field could potentially affect every system on the alien ship. But transmitting that kind of interference would require far more power than their improvised device could generate. We would need to channel the disruption through the ship's main communication array, Maya said. That means going to the bridge and convincing Morrison to risk everything on a plan that might destroy us all. Dr. Carter forced her conditioned thoughts aside and spoke as a scientist who had seen the hegemony's true nature. "They are going to destroy us anyway," she said. "I have seen what happens to species that resist relocation. The development zones are just a temporary step before complete elimination. We have nothing to lose by fighting back." Maya made her decision. With the kind of instant commitment that had kept humans alive through every disaster in their history, she activated her comm unit and contacted the bridge. "Captain Morrison, this is Rodriguez. We have a way to fight back, but it requires using the ship's main transmitter to broadcast chaotic interference at the alien vessel. The risks are extreme, but so is our situation." Morrison listened to Maya's explanation, while watching his bridge crew struggle to keep basic systems operational. The field disruptor was causing massive instabilities throughout the ship, but it was also their only weapon, against an enemy that outgunned them completely. "Do it," Morrison ordered. "Patch your signal through communications and give these aliens a taste of human creativity." Tony began rerouting the field disruptor's output through the ship's communication systems while Maya prepared to broadcast chaos at the hegemony vessel. The jazz music that had started as an engineering experiment was about to become humanity's declaration of independence from galactic authority. But as they worked, Dr. Carter made a discovery that changed everything about their situation. The EDA alien conditioning in her mind had been designed to monitor her thoughts and report resistance activities to the hegemony. Every plan they made, every weakness they discovered, was being transmitted directly to their captors. "Maya," Lisa said quietly, "they know everything we are doing. The mental conditioning is not just about compliance. It is about surveillance. They have been listening to our thoughts through the modifications they made to my brain." Maya felt cold. Fear washed over her as she realized the implications. The hegemony had not just captured their ship. They had turned one of their own crew members into an unwilling spy. Every advantage they thought they had gained was actually part of a trap. But then Maya remembered something that gave her hope. The aliens had been monitoring their thoughts, but they had never understood what those thoughts meant. The hegemony could hear human plans, but they could not comprehend human nature. "Lisa," Maya said, "can you control what thoughts they receive?" "Through the conditioning." Dr. Carter concentrated on her scientific training and forced herself to analyze the alien technology objectively. "I think so," she said. "The surveillance system responds to conscious thoughts, but not to unconscious processes. If I can keep my surface thoughts focused on surrender and compliance, the deeper planning might remain hidden." Maya smiled as she realized that the hegemony had made a crucial mistake. They had tried to turn a human scientist into a surveillance tool, but they had not accounted for the human ability to compartmentalize thoughts and maintain multiple levels of consciousness simultaneously. "Then let us give them something to listen to," Maya said. "Tony, are you ready to broadcast chaos at our captors?" Tony activated the modified communication array and began transmitting jazz-based interference patterns directly at the hegemony vessel. The alien ship's lights flickered as impossible frequencies interfaced with logical systems that had no defense against artistic improvisation. For the first time in centuries, the hegemony faced an enemy that fought with creativity instead of technology. Maya watched the alien ship's energy readings fluctuate and asked the question that would define humanity's future among the stars. They secured the doors for safety. But was it for you or for me? Maya Rodriguez watched the hegemony ship's lights flicker and dim as Tony Blake's jazz-powered chaos broadcast reached their target. The alien vessel that had seemed invincible 20 minutes ago was now struggling with system failures that its logical technology could not understand or repair. But Maya knew that their improvised attack had only bought them time, not victory. "Their shields are fluctuating," Tony reported from his position at the communication console. "But the interference is not penetrating deep enough to cause critical damage. We need more power." Captain Morrison studied the tactical displays and made a decision that would either save his crew or destroy them all. The Meridian was falling apart from the energy chaos they had created, but they were also closer to freedom than any human had been since the hegemony first appeared. "Reroute all available power to the communication array," Morrison ordered. "Life support, artificial gravity, everything except essential navigation. Give Maya and Tony every watt we can generate." Dr. Lisa Carter forced her conditioned thoughts to focus on surrender and compliance while her deeper mind worked on the real problem. The alien surveillance technology in her brain was still transmitting her surface thoughts to the hegemony, but she had learned to control what those thoughts contained, while broadcasting mental images of cooperative crew members preparing for relocation. Lisa was actually analyzing the true weakness she had discovered in the alien systems. The hegemony's technology was designed to handle predictable threats from logical civilizations. They had never encountered a species that treated impossible odds as engineering challenges rather than reasons to surrender. Maya, Lisa said quietly, the conditioning link works both ways. If I can reverse the signal flow, we might be able to transmit our chaos directly into their central computer systems. Maya turned from her console to stare at Lisa with a mixture of admiration and concern. What the doctor was suggesting would turn her own mind into a weapon, but it would also expose her to the full power of alien conditioning technology. That could kill you, Maya said. Lisa smiled with the calm determination of a scientist who had found the perfect experiment. Everything we do here could kill us, but this might actually work. The hegemony has never faced an enemy willing to weaponize their own mental conditioning against them. Tony looked up from his frequency generators with excitement in his eyes. If Lisa can create a direct link to their systems, I can feed the jazz patterns directly into their central processing units. No shields, no filters, just pure chaos transmitted at the speed of thought. Morrison made the command decision that defined human nature in the face of overwhelming odds. Do it, all of you. We came out here to explore the unknown, and we found something that wants to cage us for our own safety. Show them why that was a mistake. Dr. Carter sat down at Lisa's old science station and began the most dangerous experiment of her career. She opened her mind completely to the alien conditioning technology, allowing the surveillance system to establish a stronger connection than ever before. The artificial thoughts flooded her consciousness with overwhelming intensity, trying to make her report immediately for processing and relocation. But instead of surrendering to the conditioning, Lisa used her scientific training to analyze the signal pathway and trace it back to its source. The alien technology had created a direct link between her brain and their central systems, assuming that this would only be used for surveillance and control. They had not considered that a human scientist might reverse engineer their own mental conditioning in real time. I have the connection, Lisa said through gritted teeth as she fought to maintain her sense of self against the alien mental manipulation. Tony, feed your signal through me. Tony activated every frequency generator they had built and channeled the full power of jazz improvisation through Lisa's mind into the heart of the hegemony ship. Mathematical chaos, based on artistic inspiration, flowed directly into logical systems that had no defense against creativity. The results were immediate and devastating. Every screen on the alien vessel went dark as their central computer systems tried to process information that violated basic principles of logical organization. Emergency lighting flickered on throughout their ship, while automated systems began shutting down to prevent cascade failures. But Maya realized that they had achieved something far more important than damaging a single alien ship. As the hegemony systems failed, she detected communication signals being broadcast on frequencies that reached across the galaxy. Tony, she said with growing excitement. The signal is not just affecting their ship. It is propagating through their entire communication network. Tony checked his readings and confirmed what Maya had discovered. The hegemony operated their galactic empire through a quantum communication system that linked every ship, base, and facility they controlled. The jazz-based chaos was spreading through that network like a virus, affecting every system that relied on logical, predictable operations. Captain Morrison received damage reports from across the galaxy as hegemony installations experienced simultaneous system failures. Development zones that had imprisoned civilizations for centuries suddenly found their containment fields fluctuating. Ships that had been capturing and relocating species discovered that their transport systems no longer functioned reliably. Dr. Carter, still fighting to maintain the signal connection despite the massive strain on her mind, made the most important discovery of all. "Maya," she said weakly. "The prisoners in the development zones, they are escaping. The chaos signal is disrupting every containment system the hegemony has built." Maya watched her sensors as the alien ship that had captured them began to drift powerless through space. The hegemony representatives who had spoken with such calm authority about safety and proper development were now dealing with the collapse of their entire empire. The familiar alien voice finally returned to the communication system, but now it carried desperation instead of confidence. "Cease this attack immediately. You are destroying systems that maintain order throughout the galaxy. Billions of beings depend on hegemony protection for their survival." Morrison activated the ship's communication array and responded with words that would be remembered throughout human history. "You chose to secure the doors for your own safety, not ours. You imprisoned entire civilizations and called it protection. Now you face the consequences of trying to cage a species that values dangerous freedom over safe captivity." The hegemony voice tried again, offering negotiations and concessions that they had never granted to any previous species. "We can reach an accommodation. Humanity can be granted special status within our development system. You need not be relocated if you cease this destructive behavior." Maya laughed as she watched more hegemony systems fail throughout the galaxy. The aliens who had conquered hundreds of civilizations were now begging for mercy from the humans they had planned to imprison. "Too late," Morrison replied. "You made your choice when you decided that our freedom was too dangerous to allow. Now, every species you have ever captured is making the same choice we did." Dr. Carter finally collapsed from the strain of maintaining the signal connection, but the damage was already done. The jazz-based chaos had infected every major hegemony system and was continuing to spread as their own communication networks carried the destructive signal to every corner of their empire. Tony shut down the frequency generators as the Meridian's containment field finally collapsed completely. For the first time in 20 hours, they were free to move wherever they chose. Maya checked her long-range sensors and saw hegemony ships throughout the sector retreating from positions they had held for centuries. The empire that had maintained galactic order through force and intimidation was collapsing as their logical systems failed to cope with creative chaos. "Captain," Maya reported, "we are receiving communication signals from dozens of different species. The prisoners in the development zones are coordinating escape efforts and requesting assistance." Morrison smiled as he realized that humanity's first contact with alien intelligence had resulted in the liberation of hundreds of enslaved civilizations. The hegemony had intended to add one more species to their collection of controlled development zones, but instead they had encountered a species that taught others how to break free. Dr. Carter, recovering slowly from her ordeal, made the final observation that defined humanity's place among the stars. "They asked the wrong question," she said. "They wanted to know if humans would accept safe captivity instead of dangerous freedom. They never considered that we might choose dangerous freedom for everyone." Maya looked out at the stars where former prisoners were emerging from development zones and hegemony ships were fleeing from their own collapsing empire. The aliens had tried to lock humanity away for galactic safety, but they had forgotten the most important rule about caging dangerous animals. Make sure the cage is strong enough to hold them. The hegemony had built their empire on the assumption that superior technology guaranteed victory over any resistance. They had never encountered a species that fought back with creativity, improvisation, and the absolute refusal to accept that any limitation was permanent.